Good morning. Thank you for joining me again. This is Bo Tiwari, Boinga Tiwari, the Member of Parliament for Caroni Central for the United National Congress. My sisters and brothers, thank you for joining me. And today I want to deal with three very important and very interconnected topics. The first has to do with the working class, all of us who are workers in this country. The second has to do with the middle class, that is to say, all of the people who have used their working life and their working opportunity in order to build a home and a family and to make progress for themselves and their children in this society. And thirdly, small and medium businesses and family businesses, which are the largest number of businesses in Trinidad and Tobago and help to keep the economy going. Now, you might wonder why I am not dealing with the unemployed or the very poor. I will take an entire program on an occasion not long from now when I deal with the issue of poverty and poverty eradication. Because we have to begin the process of putting an end to poverty by creating jobs, by creating incomes for people, and by creating entrepreneurs and business in order to provide more and more jobs and to create wealth. Because in this country, nobody needs to be poor, not in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to eliminate the poverty industry, and we need to create the conditions for economic sustainability and independence for all of our citizens. If we can have a strategy for Venezuelan immigrants to help them, we can also design a workable strategy for our own people who are poor. But I will deal with that issue, which is a major issue in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm taking the position that nobody in this country needs to be poor. Today I want to deal a little bit with the working class first of all. Now, the plan, the proposal, the disposition of the United National Congress is to take the working class into the middle class and so expand the middle class and to expand the economic opportunity of working people in this country. And how will we do that? We will do it by land ownership, by home ownership, by employee share ownership plans, and by education and reskilling programs. We will help the population to lift themselves up rather than encourage them to be dependent. Now, I think all of you know that in this country over the last 4 years, 2016, 2017, 2018, and well, now into 2019, going into 2020, that a number of jobs have been lost in this country. We had a number of situations that were not properly attended to by the government, starting with the ArcelorMittal issue, in which the government would not meet with the owners of that company in order to find a resolution, and continuing from company to company, continuing in the public sector with retrenchment, and ultimately the debacle of Petrotrin, in which thousands and thousands of jobs and thousands of families and hundreds of services businesses, which were supported by the sustainability of Petrotrin, have simply collapsed in the country. So under this government, about 50,000 jobs have been lost. I take the opportunity to remind you that under the People's Partnership, we created about 56,000 jobs during our tenure there. But let me get back to the main point, the working class and what needs to be done. Working people in this country are always fearful that they will lose their jobs. And that is important because if they lose their jobs, it means they lose their income. If they lose their income, it means that they cannot support their families. Basic things like food, like transport, like simple entertainment, like leisure opportunities and activities are gone if you do not have income, if you do not have money in your pocket. And one of the problems with the working class is that the working class has become the working poor. Trinidad and Tobago always had a dual economy. The energy economy was one in which you had fairly highly paid people, relatively. And the rest of the economy was a second side of the economy governed by the principle of minimum wages. Now, under the tenure of the People's Partnership, we raised the standard of living in this country and the condition of the working class by increasing the minimum wage twice. We were always concerned about the ability of people to work, to be productive, to live, and to support their families. So, we have a situation now, as you say, as I indicated, where people are threatened with their jobs and where their income is threatened. And the suggestion I want to make to you is that we can no longer continue with an economy in which the working class, the working individual, man or woman, can continue to function in their companies in the public sector on the basis of a single wage alone. Now you know that that is a reality and that is a fact, because wherever you're working, whether you work in the public sector or in the private sector, you're also trying to hustle a living somehow. You might buy something and sell it on the side. You might get into some kind of investment. You might get into some kind of entrepreneurial activity that would make income. You would do some kind of activity that can generate you income, whether it is to look after children or having a camp during the vacation or something like that. Whether you do a taxi work on the side, whether you do some kind of, flower making or interior decorating. Those things people do because they want to supplement their income. How much better would it be to structure a system in which every working person could have more than one source of income? Wouldn't that be superior? Wouldn't that be a more predictable kind of life for the individual? Would not that make a difference to the quality of life? Now, let me say something too about having one source of income. When you are a worker, it is very, very difficult on the basis of one source of income to be able to buy a piece of land or to get a house. We know that real estate prices fluctuate, and sometimes when the economy is good, the prices are extremely high. We are in a relatively depressed state now in terms of land ownership and home ownership, and in terms of the purchasing and selling price of homes and land, but that is not going to last forever. And most people on a minimum wage cannot afford to buy a piece of land or buy a house. Most people on a regular salary in the public service or lower levels in the private sector cannot purchase a home, and therefore that has implications for building a family and managing a life in the future. So what we suggest for the working class is this. First of all, we have to build confidence and we have to have investment we have to have entrepreneurship, we have to have an economic recovery, and all of these things together will create more jobs. When you have competition in the labor market, people have better opportunities to sell their services and their skills. So that is the first thing that we need to do, to create a situation in which people can be employed. I want to let you know that we have done it before. In the 2014-2015 period, the unemployment rate in Trinidad and Tobago under the partnership was the lowest that it has ever been in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. In one particular quarter, the unemployment rate was 3.3%, the lowest ever in the history. So it is possible to create a full employment economy in Trinidad and Tobago. But what about the working stiff? What about the working class person? What about the working man or woman? How could we enhance their situation? The first thing is to ensure that jobs are plentiful, because if jobs are plentiful and all your people are employed, you can always import labor, and it is better to be importing labor than to have high unemployment. The second thing is that if they are working and they are getting decent wages, and you supplement that income, they will be in a better economic and financial position. So the second thing that we would like to do is to create the conditions for employee share ownership plans. We will do that in the state sector rather than privatize only and sell to international players or conglomerates or private sector consortia. What we can do is have the private sector participate in the ownership of state enterprises, but not alone, with the employees as well, in which a great percentage can be supported in such a way that employees get ownership of these things. What it means, therefore, is that the employees, if the companies are profitable, will then get dividends, and that would supplement their income. What it means also is that employees now understanding that profitability will mean money going into their own pockets will be much more productive. You'll have a certain element of company loyalty. I think it will be easier to do organization and strategy in order to meet production targets and in order to meet profitability targets, etc., to make these companies much more efficient and effective and competitive. The same can be done in the private sector. You don't want to go to the private sector or pass a law and say all private sector companies must give their employees shares. But you could, by persuasion and serious discussion, create the environment in which employees operating in the private sector can also get employee share ownership plans, be part of employee share ownership plan, which will do the same thing in the private sector. It will increase their opportunity for income. It will give them dividends. They will be more prone to be more highly productive. And these companies will become more competitive and efficient and so on. With these at least two sources of income now, wages and salaries and employee share ownership dividends, what will then happen is that it would be easier for employees to purchase a home and to make themselves viable in the financial system. And we can do that through land for the landless programs. If you do not have a piece of land, if you do not own a piece of land, we can make that possible for you. Under the People's Partnership, we had started to do that. We would develop the area, we would put a platform of foundation, we would run lights and water, and people then, for a small amount, would be able to build their home on the platform of the foundation and extend their foundation later if they wanted, room by room, as they are able to generate their income. So land for the landless is one opportunity. And the second one is home ownership that is affordable. Now the PNM and the Rowley government are interested in housing. They are not interested in home ownership. They are interested in housing as a strategy for winning elections by putting the housing in marginal constituencies. We are not about that. What we are about is home ownership and community development. And if people are able to own their homes, it brings more stability. It creates the conditions for the working class to enter the middle class. They have a piece of equity if they own land or if they own property, if they own a home, in which they can go to the bank and borrow money for different things, including new business creation and entrepreneurial activities, or things to enhance their quality of life or education for their children. And that is how you make the bridge for the working class to enter and grow the middle class, by making sure you have jobs in which the labor market is flexible and people have a choice and upward mobility opportunities. You create the conditions in which they can own land and secure a property, or own their homes and establish their family. And you create the conditions in which, through the ownership and the stability in their life and the multiple incomes now made possible by their wages, but also by employee share ownership, you create the conditions in which they can engage the financial system, the banks, the credit unions, the unit trusts, other institutions in the society, so that they can make a life. And more than that, you build stability, productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, competitiveness in the economy, and you create the conditions for prosperity in Trinidad and Tobago. The second issue is the middle class. Any society that does not have a strong middle class is a society that is doomed to failure. And what we have in Trinidad and Tobago now is that the middle class is dwindling. The working class is also dwindling as people lose their jobs. And democracy is becoming very fragile and very weak, because if people don't have the economic means to stand up, they will not stand up and say what they think and be counted. So our objective is to strengthen the middle class, to grow the middle class, to expand the middle class. How do we do that? By education that is meaningful, by job creation that I mentioned before, by encouraging entrepreneurship, and by encouraging inward investment. By inward investment, I mean investment from abroad that comes to Trinidad and Tobago in the non-energy sector, by giving people opportunities for entrepreneurship with new technology, etc., and also by creating the confidence in the economy, so our existing businesses begin to become more involved on the investment side. Right now, a lot of our businesses are investing, but not investing in Trinidad and Tobago. One, because they have foreign exchange problems here, and secondly, because you have a crisis of confidence. People don't know where the economy is headed. They don't know what direction we're taking. The government has no plan, and therefore there is no investment in the country. So growing the middle class is an important thing, and one of the best ways to grow the middle class is by education and sustainable employment, and by creating the opportunities for entrepreneurship so that people can generate and create wealth. So one of the things that we want to do then is to protect and enhance the working class and the jobs and the opportunities, and secondly, to grow the middle class and to enhance the opportunities for the middle class. The middle class are also very important because the middle class forms the base in which people can contribute to public good. The middle class people are the people who join the Rotary clubs, the Lions Club, that are involved in civic organizations, that are involved in a number of NGOs, etc., together with working people in the society. And when they are under pressure simply to make ends meet in their homes, and they are faced with a falling level of quality of life and falling living standards, then that volunteerism evaporates from the society, and therefore you lose all that energy and social capital that is so important for building a society, an economy, and a nation. Okay? And then finally, I want to deal with the issue of small and medium businesses and family enterprises. Our commitment in the UNC is to strengthen small businesses, of which there are many. Small and medium enterprises make up about 80% of the businesses in this country, and family businesses make up the majority of the small and medium enterprises in the country. Because in order to build a sustainable economy and to build up local capacity, as most successful countries have done, whether it is Switzerland or Costa Rica or Malaysia or Singapore, many of the industries are indigenously built businesses that have been built by families. And the way we will do that is that we will use agriculture, tourism, entertainment, and connected triggers to stimulate new small and medium enterprises and to open the door to new entrepreneurship. And there have been recently formed a confederation of regional chambers of commerce in this country, in which all the regional chambers have established themselves in their own communities, whether Point Lisas or Sangre Grande or Rima or Gasparillo or San Fernando or Siparia. They have formed chambers of commerce to promote and develop small businesses and to promote family businesses and to promote medium enterprises. And we will work with them in order to strengthen businesses. This is a government, this Rowley government, and Mr. Imbert in particular, is a government that is out to frighten small businesses in this country. They raise high taxes. They treat people in the private sector as if they were thieves and crooks. If there are thieves and crooks in government, those things must be dealt with by the law. If there are thieves and crooks in the private sector, those things must be dealt with by the law. But it is not the job of government to terrorize people who are in their business and to make all matter of claims and give notice publicly about what is happening. And at the end of the day, there is nothing that indicates that what they are saying is in fact true or have any substance. So as I said, if there are illegal businesses that are involved in drugs and crime and guns and prostitution and human trafficking, well, those must be dealt with. But the legitimate businesses, hard-working families who are building a business, some of them for a second generation, some of them for a third, some of them new entrepreneurs who are first generation, we must help those businesses to succeed. So this is important, these small and medium enterprises, because every economy that has ever been successful, in addition to the big businesses in the country, small and medium enterprises have been the foundation, the backbone of that country. That is true in the great and big United States of America. That is true in the great and big United Kingdom, which ran an economic empire in the world for centuries. Small and medium and family businesses are critical to the development of the country. And I want to explain to you why that is so important. Let's take the particular case of Trinidad and Tobago. How is our economy organized? The first thing that we have is the energy economy, and the investment in there comes from abroad. They are from the multinationals, or sometimes the state, as we did with Trinmar and Petrotrin, etc. But basically, that energy sector is dominated by investment from outside. Then you have the conglomerate sector, the Massey's and the and some Carls and so on. And I want to say something about that too, because all those conglomerates were once family businesses. Massey was Neil and Massey making investment to build a company. Okay, two people. And Ansa McCall is a company that is owned and was developed over time by the Sapgar family. Norman Sapgar being Anthony Sapgar being the icon who had the vision to develop that company. But many of the other big businesses are family businesses too. Bermuda's Biscuit, that's a family business. Associated Brands, that is a family business. Joseph Charles, that is a family business. SM Jaleel, that is a family business. And we can go on to mention a number of families in Trinidad and family businesses in Trinidad and Tobago that have gotten big over time in Trinidad and Tobago. And we must give the other family businesses an opportunity to grow big as well, as we encourage new investments and so on in Trinidad and Tobago. But I was explaining to you, we have the energy economy that is dominated by the international investment in energy. We have the big conglomerates, what you call big business in Trinidad and Tobago, relatively small in relation to other businesses in the world. And then you have the whole range of businesses that are really small and medium enterprises, many of them family businesses. And those are the ones that we need to grow and to help develop. Now, there's a problem with family businesses in which many of them are involved in importation business. That's to say, they buy things in order to distribute and sell in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have to work with them, and that is why it is important to build a confederation and to work with the confederation to create the conditions in which they can will not only be involved in importation business, but they can be involved in export-oriented business. Agriculture can be an export-oriented business. Tourism can be an important export-oriented business. They can become involved in culture and entertainment and the arts. That is also a business that can be properly managed and financed to become an export businesses. And so we can expand those family businesses. So I want to close up at this point and say to you that this country should not have any large number of poor people in this country, and we must address the issue of poverty. The second thing is that we've got to create a prosperous economy that generates jobs. And if we created a prosperous economy that generated jobs, then we must also strengthen the middle class and help them to move into the middle class. And I have outlined the ways that we can do that through employee share ownership plans, land for the landless, and property ownership through affordable housing. And we need to strengthen and expand the middle class by moving more people from the working class into the middle class. And the way we do that is by generating entrepreneurship, business opportunities, and strengthening education, and so building intellectual capital in which people can accumulate more wealth by offering higher levels of skills. And the third thing that I mentioned was entrepreneurship, creating new businesses in the country which are critical for the development of our country, but also using the base of small, medium, and family businesses in Trinidad and Tobago, which are the dominant businesses in Trinidad and Tobago, covering about 80% of our business, and reorienting them, but also helping them to become successful and to grow as other family businesses have grown to become big businesses. So I will stop at this point. I thank you very much if you stayed with me to the end. I have talked a little longer than I intended to, but I did want to raise these three issues and show you how they are interrelated and integrated, and how they make a difference as policy together. And I am now open to any questions you may have or comments that you might want to make. I look forward to your participation.
Dr. Tiwari, is the UNC prepared to pass legislation to encourage economic activity which will ultimately benefit all businesses?
Yes, one of the things that we would do, and the political leader, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, has mentioned this already, we will immediately embark on a plan to reduce taxes in this country. Because when you tax people highly, the incentive to invest is gone because the risks are higher. The borrowing levels in the banks at high rates are not conducive to business confidence and business growth. So that is one of the things that we will do. The second thing is that, as you know, we had a program and between 2010 and 2015, we just got it off the ground conceptually, and we started to do a few things. But that was repeated in our 2015 manifesto. We got we didn't win the election, so we didn't get a chance to do it. But if you look at the conversation that is taking place when CNC3, for instance, goes to Chaguanas and Sangre Grande and so on, and have these talks with people from the community, you will see that a lot of people are concerned about regional development. The reason why you have regional chambers now is that people are concerned about regional development. So you have to have a macro strategy economically, but you also have to have a set of regional development plans and get the communities involved in that. In our strategy, we had the concept of growth poles. And together with the concept of growth poles, we had the concept of economic development zones. And together with that, we had the concept of local economic development, which was linked to local government. If you had growth poles organized around the country, whether it was in Central with Chaguanas at the heart, or in Sangre Grande, Rio Claro area, with Sangre Grande as the heart on one end and Rio Claro as the heart in the other end, you can also create economic development zones, and with the local government in all of those areas, whether it's the Chaguanas Borough or the Sangre Grande local government or the Mayaro local government, what you can then do is to have local economic development strategies so that you can have a connection between your growth pole strategy, your economic development zone strategy, and your local economic development. And we will do things. Legislation alone does not allow business to prosper. You could pass all the legislation in the world and people will not do anything unless they have the confidence. You've got to have a climate of confidence, and you've got to have a set of policies that are supportive and encouraging. The legislation can then create the conditions in which you create special zones, special opportunities, special incentives that then allow particular areas or particular industries or particular kinds of investments to flourish.
Can you propose a strategy to give small and medium businesses access to foreign exchange equal to that of their larger rivals?
It cannot be done now in our current environment. We can have a fairer system, and we can give more strength to the small and medium enterprises. But we've got to solve this foreign exchange crunch and crisis that we have. And the way we do that is that, first of all, you've got to let the manufacturing sector export more. We had a plan that had to do with $100 million provision for the Exim Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. And that plan was included in our 2015 manifesto. We came up with that plan not on our own, not out of the thin air, but by consultation with the Manufacturers Association in 2014 and 2015. The PNM had no such plan. They stole the plan and they put it in one of their budgets. It might have been in 2016 or 2017, I do not remember. But out of that, very little money has been used. They have targeted the wrong businesses. They have not grown any exports significantly because they do not understand how the plan was supposed to work. So the first thing we need to do is to target the top exporting manufacturing companies and help them to penetrate markets abroad, diversified markets abroad, increase the number of shifts here in Trinidad and Tobago, which would generate more jobs, but it will also generate more foreign exchange. We had a $20 million loan from the IDB targeted at services exports. The current Minister of Planning saw the wisdom of that, and she reinforced the policy by saying that she would continue with the policy, but that has now collapsed. The IDB is complaining about it and they do not have the resources in order to do it. But that would have allowed us to export services. It would have allowed us to generate new IT-based export services opportunities in the world, and that would have earned more foreign exchange. And we've got to have investment, both local and foreign, into Trinidad and Tobago, in the non-energy sector, in other areas, that is to say, in what we call the green economy, into sustainable type industries, into renewable industries of every kind. In the blue economy, that is to say the sea around us, there are many types of businesses that can be done there. In the silver economy, we have an aging population, and we have an aging population not here in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the world. And we can also link a tourism strategy to the aging population and have large numbers of people. When a person is 60 years old now, they are not old. 65 is not old. 70 is not old. 75, 80, people are functioning. The lifespan now is 90, 95, 100 years old. And that silver economy is something with research and proper planning and organization we can capitalize on. And there are many business opportunities. They're small and larger. And finally, there is something called the orange economy, which has to do with arts, culture, creativity, innovation in the arts, performances, theater, all of those things. If we harness the energies in those properly, we can begin to do something. So if we started to do things like that and increase tourism, increased agriculture exports, increase culture exports, and we increase manufacturing and services exports, and began to bring investment that was export oriented. That is why foreign investment is so important, that they bring their markets with them. Then we could also begin now the reorientation of local, family, small and medium businesses to make sure that in addition to whatever retail that they are doing, they create a proportion of their business that has to do with foreign exchange and has to do with export earnings and has to do with the sustainability of their business over the longer term.
Dr. Tiwari, one of our viewers said that under the People's Partnership, they saw results and they had community craft and trade skill courses which benefited the uneducated, single and widowed women who were past the age of 50 to 60 years old. Do you see the return of such training?
Yes. You see, there is no development without human development. There is no human development that is meaningful unless you recognize that every citizen in the country matters, regardless of where they live, what is their level of skill, what is their level of education, what is their age, etc. And the third thing is that in this world, learning is everything. Continuous education is critical. Creating the conditions in which people are productive not only make them useful and feel good, but it makes them happy because it gives meaning, opportunity in their lives. So these kinds of training opportunities we will continue to support because they can also lead to productive enterprises that can be linked to things like tourism, entertainment, events, etc.
Dr. Tiwari, how can we create an environment where it is possible for the working and lower class to have a higher purchasing power and not struggle to meet basic financial needs?
Well, I mentioned two of the things recently. One would be to improve the conditions of work, that's to say the level of pay. And as I told you, we raised the minimum wage twice under our government, the People's Partnership, which Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa led, and we hope to have a government soon in office in which she will also lead that government. And in that situation, we are concerned about the income of people and that people have not only decent work but a living wage. And if you have a situation in which the working person can only move from paycheck to paycheck and cannot save, do not have opportunity for extra earnings, do not have opportunities for investment, you will have no development and growth in families in which the working class lead. You will have working poor only. So that's why I talked about employee share ownership plans, and we can also design and develop other areas in which working people can make investments that make a difference.
One of the other questions that we got on the live is how do we address the culture of locals viewing foreign organizations and produce as more important than our own?
I didn't get that question.
How do we address the culture of locals viewing foreign organizations and produce as more important to our own?
Oh, well, you see, that is an important question, and it derives out of our colonial inheritance. When we were part of the colonial order, the whole system was organized for the benefit of the colonizer. There are many important economists who have written about this. You know, Raoul Prebisch, for instance, has written about the center and the periphery and how all these countries were peripheral. These are Latin American economists who gained significant influence all over the world. All over the world. And we had, of course, Arthur Lewis, who considered and looked at this issue and really suggested that economies like ours could never make it into the realm of global prosperity unless we move from agriculture into manufacturing and the higher order of productivity in the world system. And you have people like Lloyd Bess, who was my close friend for many years and whom I was associated with for a long time, who talked about the plantation economy and talked about the fact that you had to reverse the process so that the production system here and the consumption patterns can be aligned to allow the locally produced and derived economy to grow and develop and expand abroad. Now, all of this thinking we need to turn into practical solutions. And what we need to do, first of all, is to begin the process of reducing agricultural imports. Okay, and the way you do that, if you cut off imports, you're going to starve the country. So what you have to do is to address the production system, and there are ways of doing it. And we have to do it in agriculture, not only by using the land in the way that we do, not only by having big farms, medium farms, small farms, but by having new and different farms, by using the technologies. Today you can create the climate in a tent for any crop you want to grow and control all the conditions to ensure that you have the best possible produce at the end. Okay, so we need to use entrepreneurial effort, the organization, the systematization, etc. And we've got to find the means to do that. And once you created international brands out of Trinidad and Tobago, then people's choice pattern will begin to change. In addition, there is a big movement towards more healthy foods, more healthy lifestyles, more indigenous things, more identity-related products, and I think that those are things that we can get to that can be of great value, so that the production and commercial strategy is related to the management of the consumption patterns.
Dr. Tiwari, how
System, and by placing an emphasis on the importance of small and medium businesses, because those are what give you your big businesses. If you understand that Ansa McCall is a family business and was once a small business, that Massey was a small business, that Lockjack was a small business, that Bermuda's was a small business, and you understand that small businesses grow, they do not remain small under the right environmental conditions, then you can have policy that support and favor small and medium enterprises. You cannot stop the big businesses because you want them to grow too. It is not a zero-sum game. It is a multiple equation that you have to manage all the time.
So one of our viewers asked, are there any plans for a universal pension, which is where persons of a certain age receives a pension, but there's a pension test which excludes individuals who have some other form of pension? Do we have any plans for that? Also, a national health plan?
Administration, the People's Partnership Administration, we were very aware of the challenges that we were facing because we had completed the 2011 census, and we were very much aware of what was happening to the population in terms of aging. We were very much aware of the low birth rate, which is 0.5%, and we were also aware of the fact that basically the NIB was going to find itself in trouble over a period of time as people began to retire, more and more people began to retire, etc. And that the workplace would have a problem because you could not replenish it with younger workers fast enough in the system. And therefore there were three things that we were working on during our administration, but we lost the election in 2015 and could not follow it. One was a national health system that would allow everybody in the country to have decent health care from both the public and the private system, and an insurance system involving private sector insurances that would allow them to have a choice in the system. Okay, so that was one. The second thing is that we were concerned about the pension situation and whether we were going to be able to meet the challenges of the future. And we looked at what could be done with the working age of people, retirement age, and so on. We did not come to a decision on that, whether we should extend it or not. And the second thing we looked at was ways and means of creating the conditions for savings that would allow the accumulation of and flow of funds into the pension funds by coming up with creative strategies. So for instance, if I'm not saying that this is our policy, but let me put forward an idea. If, for instance, from the time a child was born, government would put a small amount for that child in a fund, and when that would allow the child to fund their education, then you have other strategies once that person begins working that would allow the individual, not so much the state, to create the conditions for a pension fund and for pension contributions later. And so you'd have a give and take situation, so to speak, in the system. Now, we did not come to any decisions, but those were things that were being considered. We were concerned about the aging population, we were concerned about the pension funds, and we were concerned about the inability of the pension fund to fund pensions for everybody as the population became older. And these were things that we were considering at the time, and we are now focusing on things like that to be able to solve the problems when we get into government this time.
Dr. Tiwari, one of the other questions that we have from our viewers this morning is how can the tourism sector create more jobs to more economic activity in Trinidad and Tobago, be it ecotourism, agri-tourism, and medical tourism? How can the tourism sector stimulate those?
The tourism sector is a vital sector for any economy. You go to any part of the United States and tourism is a factor in their economic progress. You go to any place in England and tourism is a factor in their economic progress. You go to Singapore, it is there. You go to Finland, it is there. You go to Switzerland, it is there. You go to Costa Rica, it is there. You go to Cuba, it is there. Any country that you go to, all the islands of the Caribbean, tourism is a major factor in development. And anybody who does not understand that when you open up your country to tourism and travel, that you begin the process of stimulating development, does not understand anything about development, because tourism means a renewal of markets and an entry of new ways of seeing in your island, in your country, every day, every week, every month. Now, in a place like Costa Rica, they get about 100,000 tourists a year. All right, in other countries, they get more. But suppose we were to go for a target of 20 or 30,000 tourists a month. Okay? Did I say 100,000 tourists for Costa Rica a year? I meant a month. Okay? And other countries have more, so they get 1.2 million tourists a year. But let's say we went for 20 or 30,000 or 25,000 tourists per month in Trinidad and Tobago. That would allow you a manageable number of tourists, because tourists have an impact on your garbage, they have an impact on your water system, your sewage system, etc. So that you want to know how many tourists you can bear. And if you have a target of 20 or 30 or 25,000, you can figure out what are the things that you want to do to get those tourists, whether they are events, whether it is medical tourism, whether it is agricultural tourism, whether it is sun, sand, and sea tourism, whether it is entertainment tourism with panjas, things like that. And you can figure out a strategy. So you develop a holistic strategy towards tourism. And tourism is an industry that has a lot of spin-offs. From the time the tourist comes, they walk out, they walk into the airport, there's the possibility of shopping in duty-free, depending on how you design your airport and your airport surroundings. You go out, you need a taxi. All right, you go to a hotel, you pay money. You eat food, you consume things that are produced in the country. You go out on a tour that you spend money, and the focus of tourism is how much does the tourism spend. And in order for the tourism to spend, you have to make things and do things and make things happen so that the tourists can be engaged. So the whole business of tourism has to be properly thought out, and this government doesn't have a clue about it. They have collapsed tourism both in Tobago and in Trinidad, and they have even killed the local tourism industry between Trinidad and Tobago. It is hopeless.
Okay, so this will be the last question for the live this morning in the interest of time. So this viewer sent this question. How can we encourage financial institutions to be less risk adverse and give loans to small and medium businesses which will be used for investment purposes? Or can you say alternative to this, if there will be more programs like the incubator and the IBIS program and the I2I model?
Yeah, well, we did the I2I. More than that, we had 2 programs with Kariri under the People's Partnership, under the Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration. We had a $4 million grant for new industries in the Caribbean that were related to climate change, sustainable development, and a green model of development for entrepreneurs throughout the region. We had the I2I program, which was then incubated in Kariri, and we gave people money up to about, I think, $250,000, and they would start. One of the beneficiaries of that now sits in Parliament on the government side, and he was an engineer by profession at the time and won an award because of his contribution. And those things were meant to generate new and very different businesses, many of them related to technology. We also created a partnership between Microsoft and Kariri, and we created an innovation center. All of these things have gone dead under the PNM, under the Rowley administration. They have no concept of anything. We did an innovation policy that has gone dead. There is no innovation taken in the country. There is not even investment and economic activity and consumer spending in this economy, much less innovation. So yes, we will be very big on entrepreneurship, on small business creation, etc. And you need to create the financial mechanisms to do that. And what we will do is that we will work with multilateral agencies, such as the World Bank, the IDB, the Andean Development Bank, and other institutions, the Caribbean Development Bank. And we are going to create opportunities for funding at lower cost and lower risk for businesses, in which the institutions take the higher risk, with the notion that, some businesses will fail, but many of them will succeed, and it will make a difference. And we will do that working with the local banks as well, or state institutions and others, and have a very active, agile model to stimulate business activity in the country. We will also use that kind of funding to help existing small businesses that are limited to retail business to convert and transform and make of some of their business export-oriented or foreign exchange earning, or both. Well, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the 1 hour. I don't want to take more than the hour. I think we've gone over by a few minutes. We started a little late, 2 or 3 minutes late. I want to thank you for joining me this morning. I'm very happy for your questions. Feel free. I will be back next Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Tune in and we will continue the conversation. We have got to save Trinidad and Tobago together. Believe you me, there is no, what they call in literature, deus ex machina. All right, some savior to come to save any country. Finland was built by the Finns. Singapore was built by the Singaporeans. Malaysia was built by the Malaysians. Costa Rica was built by the Costa Ricans. Cuba was built by the Cubans. All right, every country has to build its own capacity and potential and make its own future. And Trinidadians and Tobagoans will be fooling themselves if they think that somebody is going to come and do it for them. And when a government fails, as this one has failed, this has been one of the worst, this has been in fact the worst government in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to acknowledge that. They are a total and absolute failure. And when a government fails, we must put a new government together and we must reset the terms and conditions of engagement between the governors and the governed, between the leaders and the led, in order to shape a society that is more desirable than the one we have now. Let us do that and let us work together to make that possible. Thank you very much, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.